Yo, what is going on? Turbo Stew here with Nerds of the Multiverse. Unfortunately for this review, Bugfang wasn't able to join us, but this isn't part of the Nerds of the Multiverse podcast. This is just something we're doing as like kind of an extra thing. We're probably going to keep up doing these reviews every week, whether or not it's going to be me doing them or Bugfang. You'll see one of us uploading a review, hopefully every either Friday or Saturday. But yeah, because The Mandalorian is now premiered on Disney Plus, and I think we're both enjoying it. I haven't really gotten his full thoughts on the show yet, but I'm assuming it's Star Wars, so I'm assuming Bugfang's enjoying it as much as I have. But yeah, so for those of you who are wondering about the next podcast, we're going to have it up tonight. It's going to be really late though, so you may want to tune in tomorrow. But if you do happen to tune in tonight, we will actually be recording the podcast live, hopefully. So it'll definitely be up tonight, regardless. And yeah, if we have it up live, you guys can join in to the podcast with us. And hopefully next week we can once again do it live, but it'll be at an earlier time. We'll see. It all just kind of depends on our work schedules because they constantly keep changing. We unfortunately don't have like a consistent work schedule, and it also kind of depends on schoolwork as well for both of us. If one of us is busy with schoolwork or the other one is, a lot of things go into it. I wish this was something we could do full time. I wish we didn't have other things going on in our lives. But unfortunately, that's not quite the case. But if you guys like what you see here, definitely hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel. And also, if you want, you guys can follow me on Twitter at TurboStew01. And I'll probably put a link there in the description as well. But yeah, so now that I've kind of postponed this long enough, let's get right into this review now, shall we? So, The Mandalorian, I'm going to give you like a quick summary of the last two episodes before I give you my plot. But basically, The Mandalorian, he's a bounty hunter. And unlike most bounty hunters, though, that we've seen in Star Wars, this particular group of bounty hunters that we see in The Mandalorian are basically part of a guild. We get like an opening scene where he goes to pick up his bounty in this really cool bar scene that feels like it was something straight out of a Western. Basically, there's these guys, they're picking on this blue alien, and I can't remember what they called it. I'm terrible with names. That's something you gotta learn about me by now, if you haven't already from previous podcasts. But I'm terrible with remembering names, so I can't remember the name of this specific creature. But he's being picked on by these other aliens, and the Mandalorian steps in, and as soon as he walks into the bar, like, the guys just look at him and they think, oh, it's a Mandalorian, he must, be looking for trouble or something. So one of the guys at the bar there, who already had his drink spilled, just looks at the Mandalorian and goes, "Hey, Mando, you spilled my drink." And so once it, like, right away tries to start a fight with him. It felt a little cheesy with how fast the bar fight just started for like no reason. But again, I think that's what they were going for. And besides, it is Star Wars, and always with Star Wars, no matter how good the movie is, there's always going to be a level of cheese that you gotta expect. So the Mandalorian beats the crap out of these guys, and then the guy who they were bullying essentially is thankful. At first he's like, hey, you can just take my credits. I appreciate the help. But of course, the Mandalorian shows him, I believe it was called a bounty puck. He shows him the puck, and the guy kind of realizes, oh, that's a bounty puck with my face on it. And he's like trying to negotiate, out of this, and the Mandalorian just like shows him his blaster and just says, "I can take you in hot or cold, your choice." So of course, in the next scene he has the guy in handcuffs as he's like taking him back to his ship. We get like interesting scene that might actually be foreshadowing later on, where they go to get a land speeder transport to take him to a ship. I couldn't find a picture of the first one that shows up, but basically the first land speeder is being operated by an R2 unit. And the Mandalorian basically says no droids, and actually pays the guy extra to call in a different land speeder that's being run by a human. And so a human comes in with this land speeder that looks like it hasn't gone through maintenance in a long time. But yeah, the Mandalorian prefers one that's being operated by a human, though, even if it's not a very good looking land speeder. So we get we then get back to the bar where he goes to collect his bounty for the guy he captured at the bar earlier. Sorry, this was a different bar. They go off world. They go to another bar where he meets up a guy who basically assigns like all these bounties. He doesn't have that many though, and unfortunately, even though the Mandalorian likes to do a lot of jobs at once, the guy's only willing to assign him one job at a time because everyone's going after these bounties. And there's it's like part of a guild of bounty hunters, and essentially you can kind of consider this guild to be like a union essentially, which makes sense because if you're going to be part of a union of bounty hunters, it kind of seems unfair just because you're not like the best at your job, means that you don't get all the work in there, and someone else takes it from you. So yeah, I can see why they might want to have like a union behind it. It also means like if you're part of this union, it means that they hold you up to some standards, like they may expect like a lot less damage when you're taking in your bounty, a lot less commotion, type of thing. But unfortunately, at this point, it seems like more people are like interested in hiring the bounty hunters that aren't part of the union because they charge a lot less. So there aren't that many jobs available for the Mandalorian. But his guy tells him about one more client that might be willing to hire him for a really good price too. So he gives him the location. The Mandalorian goes to meet with him, and we see that this guy, he has basically stormtroopers as like his bodyguards. And this was like interesting because I couldn't tell if this guy was actually part of the Empire, like what's left of the Empire, or if at this point like stormtroopers are just essentially like now because they have all their military training, they also didn't really have as much of an education about the galaxy. So I'm wondering if like the next best thing for a stormtrooper would just be to be a mercenary, essentially do similar to the Mandalorian bounty hunting work, or just being a bodyguard. And that would totally make sense, because what else are you going to do when you spent your whole life working for the Empire as a stormtrooper? So thought that was interesting. We still don't fully know if it's part of the Empire or not, but anyways, the Mandalorian walks in and he's a little bit on edge when he sees like the stormtroopers, you can tell. But regardless, the guy gives him an assignment, says that it's a bounty. He's not able to give him that much information about the bounty. He's not able to show him a picture of what it looks like, but he is able to give him a tracker and his last coordinates. And so that, with a bounty hunter like this, that's, definitely more than enough. And the guy gives him a down payment, in fact, giving him, believe it was called, I have it in my notes here, let me double check real quick. He's given a down payment of a Beskar steel, that's what it was called. And which in both Legends, which is the thing in both Legends and Star Wars canon, where Beskar steel is essentially really powerful steel that can withstand a blaster, and depending on how much force is behind it, it can at times even deflect like a lightsaber slash, pretty much. So he goes to get this melted down, and it's here where we get to see that there's like, on this same planet, there's like a whole section of different Mandalorian, essentially. So he gets it melted down and uses it as another shoulder pad for his armor, so he adds that onto it. And with all that, he's like ready to begin his new mission, his new bounty. So he goes and finds the planet the target was last located at. But as soon as he lands, he's attacked by these weird looking piranha dinosaur things in the desert. They just look so bizarre, but also so very Star Wars like. And I like how one of them is basically he's being attacked by them, and this is where we see that the Mandalorian, before we had just seen the Mandalorian as like this total badass, like nothing can stop him. This is the first time where we see him like actually struggling. Excuse me. We see him actually struggling to the point where he actually needs to be saved, and so he gets saved by I believe they're called Ugnaughts. It's the same creatures that we see in Star Wars Empire Strikes Back from Cloud City, but this particular one's name is Quill. kind of like Peter Quill from Guardians of the Galaxy, but spelled a lot differently. But he helps him, and that was my phone. But he helps him and says that he's going to help him find his bounty. And we don't really know why he's so interested in helping him. You know, he doesn't seem like he's really interested in sharing the reward or anything like that. But regardless, he tells him that he needs to learn how to ride those piranha dinosaur things that I forget the name of. And of course, the Mandalorian is just like, I could just walk there, and he's like, nope, you'll need to learn to ride them. So as soon as they arrive at the destination, you know, he explains to him that this used to be a planet of peace, but then ever since this target that all these bounty hunters have been coming after came to this land, like, you know, suddenly there's been more bounty hunters coming in, and then just more people in general just coming to the world to start shit. So it's not really a world of peace anymore. So he shows the Mandalorian where his target is in order to hopefully, you know, maintain peace. So, you know, he can make quick work of these guys and then leave, and then, you know, all will be good. So with all that, the Mandalorian's doing some recon, you know, and he's just scoping out the area. He's not going to go in guns blazing because, you know, that would be stupid. What kind of idiot would just go in guns blazing ready to, oh wait, that's right. So we get introduced to IG-11, and it's man, he's being played by Taika Waititi, and the CG for him looks amazing. I could just like watch this guy get into a gunfire, like a shootout, like all day. Like the way he fights is great. Like if you've seen the trailers for the show, you know what I'm talking about, because his whole body can move in like a 360 motion, and he's able to detect people like from all sides of him. So yeah, he just has like the perfect Deadeye targeting system, and so of course, you know, he ruins the element of surprise. So the Mandalorian comes in, you know, trying to get the bounty, but then that's when IG-11 is just like, the bounty is mine. But the Mandalorian is just kind of like, okay, how about we split the reward? And I love it. IG-11 is just like, your offer is acceptable. However, I will require having the reputation of completing the mission. And the Mandalorian is just kind of like, could we like talk about this, you know, not in the battlefield? And, you know, you got IG-11 just standing there in the middle of the battlefield just being like, I will require an answer before we can continue. And that's what causes the enemies to regroup, and now they're suddenly being shot at every single angle. And yeah, the shootout, like I said, is really cool because we get to see that even though the Mandalorian is like badass, he's not invincible by any means. Like he could, if he wasn't doing reconnaissance, and if he wasn't like you know, scoping out the area, like he would have been screwed essentially. But you know, and we even see that he doesn't have like the best aim when he's under a lot of stress, understandably. But yeah, because you see him firing a few rounds and missing quite a bunch as well. So basically, after this shootout, they find a Gatling gun. And they use that to finally, you know, kill off the rest of the people in the area. And then they go in looking for the target. And something is very weird about the target, because the target looks like a baby, even though it's supposed to be 50 years old. And that's when IG-11 says that some creatures age faster than others. And or differently than others, I should say, not faster, because in this case it's definitely slower. But it ends up being a baby Yoda looking thing. So I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of Yoda's species, if there was one, but that's what it was. It's like the same species as Yoda, and what we'll see later on is that it ends up actually being force sensitive too. So this was the target, and IG-11, as it turns out, was given different orders than the Mandalorian, because the Mandalorian was told to bring it in alive. However, you know, proof of execution was also acceptable for a much lower price, but I guess IG-11 was told it had to be terminated. Of course, the Mandalorian, whether or not it's because the Mandalorian does have a heart, or if it's because the Mandalorian just wants the bigger reward, you know, doesn't let IG-11 kill the child. So he shoots IG-11 in the head in I couldn't find the shot in Google Images, but it was a really cool shot the way it happens, because you don't really see, like, this here was just concept art, the one I'm showing you, because originally you don't even see him like move at all. You just see the reflection of the shot through his helmet. So at first you think it's IG-11 shooting the baby, but then cuts out and it turns out it was the Mandalorian shooting IG-11. It was such a beautiful shot right there. Sad that I couldn't find it. So anyways, he ends up taking the little baby Yoda. I, again, don't remember the name of the species, so I'm just going to call it Baby Yoda for now, even though it's not, like, literally Yoda as a baby, unless it turns out to be a clone, which I've heard that theory before, so, we never know. But yeah, this ends episode 1. But really quick, episode 2 doesn't have that much going for it, so I'm just going to recap episode 2 before I give my final thoughts. So episode 2, he goes back to his ship, but he sees that it's being stripped apart by a bunch of Jawas, and of course he's not happy about this at all. So he ends up, taking a few of them down with his rifle, and the Jawas, of course, escape, and we get a really cool chase sequence where he's trying to go after the Jawas. But like, of course, the Jawas, have them in numbers, even though he has them in skill and size. The Jawas, there's just too many of them. So, of course, the Jawas end up escaping, and he's kind of left with a ship that doesn't work. He has a bounty, but no one to turn it into. So he ends up going back to Quill, and, Quill tells him that, yeah, if you want to get your parts back, you have to trade with the Jawas. There's, like, no other way. Also, I almost forgot to talk about the ambush scene. So, like I mentioned earlier with IG-11, there are definitely other people going after the bounty as well, because he gets ambushed by these 3 creatures, and I can't remember what the race was, but it's the same race as Bosk, who's also a bounty hunter from originally from Empire Strikes Back, but he's made many appearances in Star Wars Legends, and even in Star Wars the Clone Wars, he was a main character in that or not a main character, but he was a reoccurring character in Star Wars the Clone Wars. So anyways, he's being ambushed by these 3, and what's really cool is that when you look at their axes, they're constantly vibrating, meaning that I believe the metal, the way I forgot the name of the material. But it is, I almost said vibranium, but that's Marvel, not Star Wars. But it is based on a real type of metal that we see a lot in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I wish I could remember the name of it. But yeah, I think, to my knowledge, this is the first time we've actually seen... excuse me. This is the first time we've actually seen that type of metal in Star Wars canon. And I could be wrong, like maybe it was mentioned in the books before, but this is the first time I can think of that we've actually physically seen it. And so to me, that was really cool. But basically, it's the type of metal that's supposed to go toe-to-toe with a lightsaber. Like, if you had a sword made out of it, you could actually battle someone with a lightsaber, not have to worry about your lightsaber being cut in half or anything like that. So, of course, he fights them off, and so of course he fights them off, but yeah, going back to the Jawas, he and Quill go to the Jawas to make a trade, but of course he doesn't really have that much to trade at this point. He at first didn't even want to trade, because he's like, why should I trade? They're my parts. But of course, the Jawas, we don't hear what they said, or we don't see what they said in the subtitles, but it's kind of clear the Jawas are just kind of like, yeah, but you killed a bunch of our people, so I think that makes us even, or something like that. I don't know. But the Jawas aren't like completely unreasonable. They're willing to make a trade. They want an egg, and they say that if he can retrieve an egg for them, they will give him all of his parts back. So he goes to face he tries to grab the egg without being caught, but of course that never works out. So he gets caught, and the creature that of course laid the egg is trying to kill him. And it reminds me of the rhino creature that we saw in Star Wars Attack of the Clones. I don't know if it's the same species or not, but that's what it looked like. But anyways, the fight is not going in his favor at all. Like, he's just getting his ass handed to him. And so at a moment where we think our hero is done for, suddenly we see that the creature that he's fighting against is floating in the air, and we then realize that, yeah, not only is it the same species as Yoda, but it's also, much like Yoda, it's very strong in the Force, because if this is the creature as a baby and he's already able to lift this rhino off the ground, you just can't help but wonder what his potential is going to be like when he like hits the age of 100 or 200, because, yeah, this is him as a baby lifting it off the ground. And yeah, that, which was a really cool scene. So he gives the eggs to the Jawas, and in a really funny twist, the Jawas, what we're thinking is that because the Jawas just love to sell stuff, they love money, so we're thinking the Jawas just wanted to sell this egg because it was valuable or something. No, they just wanted to eat it. And that was just so funny because, yeah, going into this, I did not expect that at all. I thought they wanted to sell it or something, but no, they just straight up eat it. They give him back his parts, but of course, they're Jawas. They don't care, so they don't bother to help him put his ship back together. So but Quill is nice enough to help, even though he doesn't have to. So Quill helps him get his ship up and running. And what's cool is the Mandalorian even offers Quill like a spot on his ship. The Mandalorian is just like amazed by this guy's generosity, and he like wants to give him some kind of reward. He's like, "Can I split the reward with you?" And the guy refuses any reward. And Quill's like, "I could use a guy like you on my ship," but of course, he mentions he came to this planet to retire and he doesn't want to do any labor. So with all that, basically the ship is finally up and running, and we get our Mandalorian taking off to his next adventure, whatever it might be. We do see him constantly checking the baby, because after the baby uses the Force, it's suddenly, kind of asleep for the rest of the episode, and you see him constantly checking on the baby to make sure it's still alive, because you can kind of tell that he doesn't really know much about the Force in general. He's no expert, so he's not even sure if it was the Force that the baby was used, or maybe he doesn't even know what the Force is. Like, we're not fully aware of like what he knows and doesn't know about the Jedi or anything like that. But overall, like, these two episodes were great. The Mandalorian himself, I'll say, like, I got worried at first because I thought the whole show, I think Star Wars Explains, if you guys ever check out his channel, I think he said it the best. Like, the whole show, it felt like it was just going to be like, oh, this is a cool guy doing cool guy things. And I didn't think he was going to say much because I thought the whole point of him being a silent protagonist was going to be like an insert character type of thing. But yeah, no, that ended up not in any way, shape or form being like the case with his character. Like, the little dialogue that we get with him, like especially in the very beginning when he like says no droids, and then we see like later on him having PTSD of some horrifying event, it does like heavily hint that he lost his family or lost people during the Clone Wars, and it might have been the droids that attacked Mandalore and separated him from his family. There's still some stuff about Mandalore that we don't have full knowledge of. Like, we've seen the aftermath of the Clone Wars in Star Wars Rebels, but we don't really know what happened to Mandalore, at least not yet, not until the next season comes out. But we don't know much about what happened to Mandalore after Darth Maul left the planet. We know a little bit from Star Wars Rebels and from the Ahsoka novel, but other than those two, like, it's still kind of all kind of a big mystery, honestly. So I'm curious if either this show or the next season of the Clone Wars, which I believe will be Star Wars: The Clone Wars season 7, if I'm not mistaken. So I do hope that those two shows end up I hope these two shows end up exploring that aspect a lot more. And who knows, we could actually, I didn't even think of this until now, we could see that same character make a small appearance in the clone excuse me, I don't know, I think I'm getting like a cold or something today, sorry. But we could totally see that same character making like a cameo as like a kid in the Clone Wars. It's definitely very possible. But especially because you got Dave Filoni working on both shows. Like, he's not the creator of The Mandalorian, but he definitely does have like inputs on it. So it's definitely possible we could see like a young version of The Mandalorian in the Clone Wars. I definitely like really love his chemistry with both Quill and I loved it with IG-11 for how little like IG-11 was on screen. Because he's a droid, I don't think IG-11 is gone, and I think there are going to be consequences for him not only killing IG-11 but killing the other bounty hunters that were going after the reward too. Because when you're part of a union, I think there would be a few rules against like killing people who are also part of that union, but I could end up being wrong. Now, yes, those bounty hunters that attacked him, that would have been like self-defense in his case. However, the whoever's like in charge of this guild, which might have been the guy who was assigning the bounties, I'm not 100% sure yet. Whoever's in charge though may not see it that way, because he may be like, yeah, but according to IG-11, you just shot him cold-blooded. So it's unknown whether or not that's going to bite him in the ass, but I think it will. I think we're going to see more of IG-11, especially because from what I understand, Taika Waititi is going to be returning in the show. Like, not just to direct, but also to voice more IG-11. So, only time will tell, or maybe it'll be a different IG unit. Who knows? And yeah, like, I think for the Mandalorian being a silent protagonist, there's definitely a lot of depth to him that I didn't expect. And I was worried that the show was going to, like, make him a bland character just so he could be, like, an insert character for everyone. But any concern I had about the show kind of went away after the first episode. And man, visually, okay, so like that's the other thing I gotta bring up about the show, is that visually it looks like a movie. Like, it's really good movie quality. Like, now I'm not saying it's not quite Solo or Last Jedi level of quality, where the special effects in those two movies were just so amazing. In that sense, like, we're not going to see anything in that big of a scope, I don't think. But what we do see on there, because it's the Outer Rims of the Galaxy, you don't need to, though. You don't need to focus that much on special effects. So it makes it so when we see them on screen, they look great, but they're not overused. We don't need to worry about, like, having a planet like Coruscant, where there has to be CG everywhere. I don't think we're going to have to worry about any of that kind of stuff, because for the most part, most of the planets are going to look like Tatooine. And I think, given the show's budget, which is, I believe, $160 million, you can easily do something like that with that much money. So yeah, visually the show's great. Acting has been great from everyone. I love, like, the many different celebrities we gotten in the show, all the different cameos we've seen. Whether or not they're just cameos or full roles that are going to come out later on, we'll see. Pedro Pascal. Last thing I wanted to say before I kind of wrap this review up, with his acting, again, he's saying so much with his body movement and his little dialogue. Although, okay, I'll be fair, I don't know 100% if that's him in the suit, though. I should have probably looked that up before doing this review, because if it's not in the suit, if it's not him in the suit, whoever the body actor is, also amazing. Like, because yeah, I think, like, if it is a different actor than the suit actor, they work so well together, like the voice and the body movement, to where it's like you can't tell, and that's a good thing. If you can't tell that it's two different actors, then that means the suit actor is doing an amazing job. Again, I don't know, because I haven't looked this up, and I will for episode 3, so I'll have an answer. But yeah, so Pedro Pascal, for what little he's able to do when you're constricted in the suit and when you can only use, like, a little dialogue at a time, he does amazing. Like, we've already been hinted at with so much of his character, and I have no doubt, like, when the reveals come about more about him, it's just going to be like, oh yeah, this all makes sense when you look back at these earlier episodes. And I think that about wraps it up. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Again, we're hoping to do these reviews every week. We're going to try to have these up every Saturday or Friday night, maybe. I might start doing these live as well. I'm not sure. This first one I wanted to do it recording just because, in case I messed up or something like that. That way I could just edit it out and you guys would never know. But I think I might actually start doing these, like, live now, and hopefully I'll have Bugfang to talk about it with him. And so I'll be back hopefully next week. And remember, you can follow me on Twitter at TurboStew01. And please make sure to like and subscribe if you like our content. Again, the podcast will be up tonight, and that one will actually be live. It'll be Bugfang and I, and we got some fun topics. Nothing like amazing, but just decent topics. If you've been keeping up with things that are going on, you'll probably be able to guess what some of them are. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and you guys have an awesome day.